Okay, great. Thank you. My name's Jeff Roloffs. I'm an attorney for J&Co. Thank you for taking the time to put this on your meeting agenda. Um, I do want to walk through the slides that we previously submitted. I made a few minor edits preparing for the meeting tonight. So what you're seeing here is a slightly revised version, primarily the same. Um, and I want to just start out with a quick clarification as to why we're here tonight. So tonight's meeting really was just our thought was to have another sort of informal discussion. We thought this subcommittee was an appropriate forum for continued dialogue with city leaders, and an opportunity to get more input from residents of Framingham and in particular the neighborhood. We anticipate another follow-up subcommittee, and we're really aiming to try to get a zoning process started. We haven't even presented proposed zoning provisions, so what we're anticipating after tonight, if you're receptive to it, is a follow-up subcommittee meeting. Prior to that, we will submit some proposed zoning provisions for a more detailed consideration. Our desire then is to get one of the counselors to sponsor the proposed zoning provisions, submit them to the city council, and we would ask the city council to then proceed with its public hearing process associated with the proposed zoning amendments, just like it does for all other zoning amendments. That process is going to be consist of an elaborate public hearing process conducted by the city council as well as the planning board separately or jointly, depending on how you all want to proceed with that. We're not actually looking for any votes or recommendations from the subcommittee at this point. Again, we're really just looking for somebody, a city councilor, to sponsor the zoning provisions. That can be done even if a councilor doesn't actually support the zoning provisions or support them in exactly the form they're submitted. So this is really another forum, pre-zoning process forum for discussion. The
Jeff,
zoning,
I
sorry.
just want to say one thing. So the
Yep.
planning and zoning, just so people are clear, planning and zoning is the body that would be reviewing zoning and that would be the sponsor of any kind of zoning amendments. That's the purpose of this committee. The planning board is the recommending, they either recommend for or against any kind of planning, any kind of zoning amendment. So that, obviously that would have to go to them, and that any zoning amendment could not be voted until we get a recommendation. Aside from that, which is way down the road. The other part, I want people that are here tonight, because there's a lot of participants. We have 71. That there are documents online, master land use plan, and our RKG report that did update our master land use plan. I was the chair of the planning board at the time. Uh, we updated our master land use plan. RKG did that report, and those reports should all be available for everybody on this call to review. Just as a point of information, as a matter of fact, RKG did actually call out this particular site and different sites that are in the master land use plan for housing development. So I'm just saying, I actually I disagreed with that in 2020 at that time. But we continue to hear that we need housing. I've heard a lot from a lot of residents all over Framingham that we need, especially in Nobscot, that we need to be able to find housing for seniors to downsize into ownership housing. So this is in response to, some of that's in response to it. Some of it may fly, some of it may not fly. But, again, this is a concept plan. Conceptual plans change, and they change dramatically. And I can point to 770 Water Street that has now 158 rental units on a 4-acre lot. So this is 31 acres, and yes, it is a dense proposal, but if you think of it realistically, if you're gonna put 158 units of apartments across from my house, which I'm affected by this, whatever goes on here is gonna affect me directly. as a counselor and as a resident. Um, and I think about 158 units across the street from me that are rental and concerns about traffic. I would just say, from my perspective, and I've always been very careful about traffic and impacts, but virtually you never see cars going in and out of there. So they're really, that impact from that apartment building has really not impacted traffic. Um, at any rate, so having said that, I'm going to go on to the main event here and let Attorney roll with it.
Right. Thank you for that additional background. So the zoning process precedes any permitting process. The goal here is to present a concept plan, and the reason we do that is to facilitate the adoption and the drafting and adoption of zoning provisions that will then work to accommodate a concept and set up a framework for the permitting review process. So there's a lot of process ahead of us before we get anywhere close to a final project proposal. The zoning itself that we will be drafting and submitting and subjecting to these public hearing review proceedings will define the boundaries of the zone, identify the uses allowed and not allowed, identify who the special permit granting authority will be for any proposed project, impose requirements, limitations related to density, height, setbacks, buffers, open space, affordable housing, mitigation, etc., impose the required review procedures, including peer review of various sorts, and identify the special permit standards. And those standards will be tailored to protect the neighborhood. The zoning process itself, as we talked about before, involves public hearings before the city council and the planning board with a final vote by the city council. The approximate boundaries as we're envisioning right now are shown on these images here. This is the area, Nobscot Village Center here, approximately 30 acres in red there. You can see the boundaries here. And then we've identified the different nearby zoning districts on this figure to the left here. The current development concept and the considerations that have shaped this concept. So we've heard a lot from the neighbors through the various meetings we've had with them privately, but also all through that MBTA overlay process and other meetings that we've had with them. We know that there are a lot of concerns here, valid concerns that we are sensitive to. Traffic, changing the rural streetscape, changing the neighborhood's rural character, the visual impacts to all the residential properties nearby, blasting impacts, lighting, stormwater, noise, potential school impacts to city infrastructure and services. So we're tuning into these, and these are going to drive the parameters that we're going to be looking to impose within the zoning provisions, and ultimately would come into play with respect to any special permit process and conditions and limitations imposed there. We've heard that there are certain features that are desirable or desired by the residents if there is going to be residential development here. Appropriate design features associated with the buildings, maintaining the rural streetscape along Edmonds and Edgell, which are both scenic roadways, providing meaningful vegetated buffers between the project and the residential properties, providing a mix of housing types, ownership units, age-restricted units, smaller units, affordable units. We're looking for something that will be available to residents in Framingham for downsizing and sort of, the types of properties that many residents in Framingham and the neighborhood might want to move into themselves. Architectural styles that are compatible with the rural character of the area, sidewalk extensions, trail and open space connections, traffic improvement measures, and potential expansion of the Nobscot Park. Higher residential development here, as Councilor Long has mentioned, has been recommended through the various planning efforts previously undertaken by the city. It's a sensible land use planning to accommodate more housing in this area, being adjacent to the Nobscot Village Center, and sort of a transition area between the village center and the lower density residential surrounding areas. The benefits associated with higher residential use here are increased housing supply within this area, significant tax revenue, more affordable housing, local business support, park and recreation connections, open space. And this is an opportunity to proactively regulate what goes here as compared to just giving up and letting the Dover Amendment uses take over. Strategies for addressing the concerns. There are a lot of different ways to address the various concerns. I won't go through all of them here, but these are the concerns that we've already identified, and there are various measures and strategies for addressing those concerns. Some that'll be addressed within the zoning provisions, and then some that will be more addressed in a more tailored way once you've got a concrete proposal in front of the special permit granting authority. So the concept now, you can see Edmonds Road at the top, Edgell Road right here on the right, Nobscot Village Center right there. The concept here includes a mix of housing types. So on this image, you see the larger buildings in the center area of the site, multifamily uses. You've got some larger multifamily buildings, smaller than these, but along the streetscapes, it's a reduced number, reduced types of units. The perimeters would be limited to 2.5-story townhomes. The zoning could limit how many you can put along Edmonds and Edgell. Again, we're going to try to build in parameters and restrictions to preserve these landscapes, the rural streetscapes along both of those roadways. The concept provides significant buffers here of varying dimensions, but all then bordered by townhouse developments or townhouse style buildings along the perimeter of the project. So to the extent there's any visible impact from the various residential neighbors here on Livoli Road, if you're able to get through the vegetative screening that would be preserved there, what you're going to be viewing are buildings that are set back from the property line and of a sort that are consistent in character with the residential area of the neighborhood. Access would be provided on both Edmonds and Edgell, which gives the residents of this neighborhood the opportunity to get in and out without necessarily going through the village center. And then significant open space preservation. And this concept preserves actually more than 65% of the open space of the parcels. And this figure here just shows you the calculations, and we just wanted to highlight again the open space preserved through the concept proposed here.
One other thing is that there will not be any commercial on this property.
Right. This concept is residential only. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, because commercial is where you generate a lot of traffic.
Right. I should also add that in terms of maybe I should have spent more time on some of the concerns associated, traffic being one of the most significant ones. You can really manage traffic impact associated with these types of developments through age restrictions, the density, obviously, a number of bedrooms. And those are things that we can address in the zoning. We are also anticipating, by the way, that a development agreement would be put into place as part of the city council's consideration of zoning amendments, because there are certain commitments, for example, related to what percentage will be ownership versus rental, are topics not typically dealt with within zoning itself. So we can manage some of those issues and concerns in a development agreement, which we're totally receptive to. The architectural concepts that we've been floating are shown here. These designs are, the goal here again is to provide designs that are consistent with the rural landscape and character of the area already as it stands. So this is a duplex unit, might even be a triplex. So even for the multifamily units that involve 2 or 3 or more units, it can still be designed in a way where the residential features and character is maintained. This is I think a 5-unit multifamily example. And then this is the larger buildings in the center of the site. with which would have amenities associated with them and potentially would be managed in an operational way that's somewhat independent of the townhouse development portions of the project. That would be to be determined. Visual impact has been an obvious concern for the residents. So we started to put some cross-section visual aids together. There would be more that we would prepare in connection with probably the zoning process if requested, but particularly with respect to any specific development proposal. But as related to the concept, I'll just scan through these slides. What they're showing in the top right corner is the cross section that you're seeing on each slide. And then the address, the starting point address is down in the bottom left. So on this slide, for example, this is 31 Livoli Road, a little person here. That's the line of sight that they would have from their property here into the development through this vegetated buffer zone that you can see here. The grade changes are actually going to help in terms of screening the project from the residential neighborhoods. You'll see that more in some other slides. And then these slides are also intended to point out that the lower elevation townhouses that would be built along the perimeter of the concept will also serve to screen the offsite properties from the larger buildings that are proposed in the middle of this concept here. So from here, 31 Livoli Road, person standing in their backyard is looking up into the buffer where vegetation will be maintained. There may also be requirements or proposals for supplemental plantings, maybe some understory plantings if additional screening is warranted in any particular areas, and then the view to the townhouse buildings here. Moving forward to other cross sections, this cross section, as you can see from here, extends deeper into the project through to these larger buildings in the middle. And we wanted to present that because what you'll see here is, so from this 20 Livoli Road property, this person would be looking into the vegetation preserved, the supplemental vegetation to be provided, and then to one of these smaller townhouses on the perimeter of the development that collectively, and even the townhouse by itself, combined with the elevation changes, are going to prevent any visibility to the larger buildings in the middle of the site. So obviously where you do your cross section matters. And as we get into a more detailed public hearing or review process, if there are particular cross sections that you want us to work up so that you can see more clearly how the project would be perceived from different locations, we can do that. But you can see here, this visibility here is going to be screened. Possibly you'd see parts of that townhouse building, but that property owner wouldn't even be able to see the larger buildings in the middle of the site. And then we just have more cross sections. This is in an area with a larger buffer zone. Visibility would be limited. And then just moving around here, you're looking at closer neighbors. And I won't go through them in detail here. These slides are available to the residents and the public, so anyone can go in and digest them in more detail. But the point is that there are ample opportunities here to provide screening so that the buildings that are constructed within the project area can be appropriately screened, situated, and sized in a way that the visual impact can be managed, we believe. We have had consultants conduct preliminary assessments, impact assessments. These would be fleshed out they can be fleshed out during the zoning process if the city council wants us to, but they would certainly be fleshed out as part of any permit process, along with the assistance of peer reviewers on behalf of the city and the special permit granting authority. So our consultants have looked at the utilities nearby. The water is available, gas, electric, and sewer infrastructure within the roadways that are easy to connect to are available. The wetlands on this site aren't an issue. The stormwater improvements and management practices will be developed and reviewed during the permitting process. There are going to be challenges there, of course, given the terrain, but there's plenty of space, particularly with the open space being protected, to design an appropriate stormwater management system so there won't be any issues associated with that. The initial traffic studies, the perception of traffic impacts is always significant. We had our traffic consultant look at a hypothetical 416 unit development just to get a handle on the types of traffic associated with that. The projected generated traffic for a development like that would be 145 to 205 peak hour trips. So during the busiest hour of the day, when you distribute those trips across the different access drives and the different directions, you're basically looking at approximately one vehicle per minute entering or exiting each access point during the AM and PM peak hours. Obviously, this is a very basic overview of traffic studies that will be way more elaborate. They will be brought up to date to accommodate the recent developments in the area. And traffic will be, we are anticipating, will be a topic of significant focus during any special permit process. And it's going to be site dependent. So a specific project is designed, and we can get away from these sort of hypothetical studies. It'll be a project specific study with actual projections associated with that project. Student generation, you know, the student generation is not going to be significant for a development like this. If we're talking about multifamily units as proposed, age restricted units obviously aren't generating school age children. For the assumed 460 unit development, if we were assuming 200 townhomes and 260 multifamily units, here are the projected student generation rates. 31 students if 100 of the multifamily units were age restricted, and 36 units if there were no age restrictions. These estimates do not account for applicable bedroom size limits, which could be imposed through the zoning or the special permit itself. These assumptions assume that each of the townhome units out here are essentially single family homes. So there's no credit or reduction based on the fact that these are smaller townhomes with one or two bedrooms versus 5 bedroom single family homes. They've just treated them the same for this analysis. Density per acre, I'm not going to go through each of these, but obviously there are higher density developments in Framingham, significantly higher than the density proposed here. The density proposed here is approximately 15 units per acre. And you see that down here, this bottom line. This is the proposed concept. The Nobscot Plaza, I know it's got a different name now, but that's twice the density of what we're proposing here. Obviously, it's a high number of units on a much smaller piece of property, with this one being 30 acres versus the approximately 5 for that project. And that's the concept. So again, we're looking to this evening, we appreciate you taking the time to put this on your agenda to open this up for additional public feedback. And our hope really is to just get the zoning review process going. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for public input as we move forward with that process. And we look forward to working with the city, with the councilors and the residents as we do that. Thank you.